Everybody, welcome to What the Talk. This is our bonus show. We record this live each and every week, exclusively on patreon.com/whatthetech. I'm Andrew and I'm finally joined by Paul Thurrott. Oh, so good to have you here, Paul.
I believe you were the problem last week, no?
I was the problem last week, and the problem probably the week before. I've been a messy boy. My life has been a disaster the last week, but
Sure.
It's fine. Hey, by the way, I'm looking at a photo of your desk from 2003. Those are some sweet Klipsch speakers.
Klipsch, yeah. I often had Bose speakers. Like I had those powered Bose speakers for my Apple IIgs that were white, that color match, right? And you could mount them vertically or horizontally on the speaker stands, and I had brackets to put them onto the desk, and the Bose logo you could rotate it so it looked right. And then later in life, after the Klipsch speakers, I did go back to Bose for a while as well. And
here's a question for you: do you have speakers on your desk right now? Do you have speakers?
No, no, but that's actually a very recent development. So I'm using the built-in speakers in this all-in-one computer for the computer. The Xbox One that I use, I have these powered studio monitors. They're awesome speakers. But remember, I dropped that display on the ground and broke it.
Yeah.
The display I brought in has a built-in stereo speakers, which sounds like how good could they be? But the truth is, I actually hear things in the games that I never heard before with those supposedly superior stereo separated speakers. So I'm just using the it's
interesting.
So those speakers are just on the ground. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them, but yeah, I usually do.
So since we are doing a bonus show together today, I do want to talk to you. I generally do this once a year where I interview you, and I always find it bizarre.
Running out of things.
No. And I'm going to tell you why. I think it's bizarre to interview a friend because we've been friends for almost, I think, like 8 years now, and we kind of do a show where we're talking to each other, and we're talking at each other. But it's not like me asking you questions and you answering them. It's more of if I'm asking a question, it's a general question that we're going to go into. But I really enjoy interviewing you. And also Mary Jo Foley's probably actually Mary Jo is my best interview I've ever done. It's Mary Jo Foley and Jake the Snake Roberts. My two favorite interviews that I've ever done in my life.
Anyone named Jake is just automatically the Snake.
Jake the Snake Roberts, yeah, the professional wrestler.
Everyone named Jake is Jake the Snake, whatever his last name is.
How could you not be? How could you not be Jake the Snake?
Like Jake Plummer, former quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. Jake the Snake.
Jake the Snake. But you're up there as far as my favorite people to talk to and interview because there's, your path to journalism and your path to what you do today is really, it was a couple things that happened in your life that kind of brought you in this scenario. And I kind of like, my life is like that too. I was never supposed to do this as my living. I was never supposed to get into radio. I loved radio. And you did also. I mean, we spoke about how you would record, fake radio shows essentially when you were younger.
That's true.
And I would do the same thing. So we kind of have that similar thing, and that brought us into this podcasting thing because this is essentially radio now. We have more of a reach. I was talking to a network here in New York. I guess I could say it. I don't care. I was talking to WABC, and WABC was very interested in syndicating the show and Mad Men, and the potential reach that we would have in New York City, right? New York City.
Right.
The biggest market on the planet for radio, New York. It's where people want to go. We would have a smaller reach,
sure,
compared to what we get regularly on a podcast basis, where people have to go and download and find us. It's actually amazing how this is blown up and podcasting has become the way that we.
Well, we just talked about TV and how different it is. I mean, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
This is the digital transformation of this business,
And when I started about 10 years ago, it's going to be 10 years next 2 months for GFQ. There wasn't as much noise, right? Like it was easy for me. Now, listen, I'm not saying that this was easy, but as far as a grand scheme goes, for a 25-year-old with no broadcasting experience, with no engineering experience, with audio or video, to put something together and say, that's good enough. And for people to find you and discover you, it was very easy compared to, like we were on Stickam at one point. I don't, you remember that, Paul? We used to broadcast on Stickam, and Leo did also. When Leo left, that was kind of the best thing that ever happened to me because they needed to fill that space up for tech.
That's funny.
And we were getting like 50,000 unique viewers an hour. It was wild. And that's how this kind of parlayed into this. But there was less noise. And I'm sure for you, with therot.com and your previous, ventures that you've done and the previous companies that you worked with, the noise level wasn't there as much. Obviously, everybody knew their key websites that they went to. You knew CNET, you knew ZDNet. But a specialty site that was kind of hand-curated content and written by one person like you was kind of easier to kind of go through that noise. Now, we are in a terrible content overload where it's not as easy to break through the noise. And I kind of wanted to talk to you about that as far as like therot.com goes and the content that you do. You're kind of a specialty because you write, you do video, and you do audio. And all three of the things that you do are pretty successful, as far as the grand scheme of things go. But do you think it's harder now to break through compared to 10 years ago? Like if you started a podcast tomorrow, do you think it's more difficult now to kind of break through the noise and to gain the exposure compared to 10 years ago when, Twitter wasn't as popular and Facebook, it wasn't as big. It wasn't as the source for news or source for content.
I have to guess because I'm not starting now, but it's certainly hard enough for me being established. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of choices now. I think there's a very App Store-like thing that's happening with podcasts right now where they've crested some wave and it's mainstream and everyone knows about it and it's super popular and everyone's checking out podcasts and the quality has gone up dramatically. There are incredible podcast series of every kind imaginable, and we can go down that rabbit hole and talk about some favorites or whatever. And but whatever, it's from a consumer standpoint, it's hard because there's so many choices. And from a content creator's perspective, it's hard because you get lost in that sea of choices, And so you just said, and you're right, what I do is essentially some kind of a specialty thing. I just talked about the Patriots, for example, and the thing. Nobody cares about my opinion of the Patriots. It's just a personal thing. But people who do listen to me probably listen to me for whatever, personal technology, Windows, whatever. So I think it's getting harder and harder. It's like domain names. There aren't any good ones left. If you want to make a name for yourself today, you have to pick a topic that's not already saturated by bigger, better, more experienced voices, and your options are limited. I'll just mention this in passing because I think you and I I talked to you about this, but my wife is starting a home swap, like I guess you would call it a house swap blog. We argue over that term, but whatever. And because we do a home swap every year, we've done it every year since 2006, almost always in Europe, usually for 3 weeks in length. I try to spend a month of the year every year overseas. I think I've been doing that at least since 2011, something like that, but whatever. And so there's a thing that like her and I, and she does most of that work with the home swap. That's mostly her, have a certain experience level that most people don't have. And it's a topic that's of interest. It's a specialty topic for sure. But most people who own homes especially will hear that and say, oh, like home swapping, that's actually really interesting. I could never let people into my house like that. Or, oh my God, how do I get started? Those are pretty much the two reactions. But even for the people who are not who never believe they're going to want to do this, there might be some interesting information there regardless, because they're still kind of fascinated by the topic, by that topic. So will my wife's home swap blog be the next super site for Windows or whatever? No, probably not. And there's a built-in audience size potential for anything. I don't know what it is. I guess we're going to find out. But could we turn that into podcasts and other stuff? Maybe. We don't have a lot of.
No, but listen, but here's the great thing about this, right? The fact that your wife can do a website on home swapping, and the fact that she can do a podcast on home swapping. We were talking about how we're doing the show today. Yeah, if you wanted to. And you know what?
Mm-hmm.
The technical disadvantages and the technical difficulty is nowhere near it was 10 years ago. So when we talk about cutting through the noise, obviously that's some noise, right? Any kind of barrier is noise, in my opinion. You don't have those. Like right now, Paul, it's wild. You're in Pennsylvania. I'm in New York. I can't. I have a broken system here. So the way that I'm doing this, I'm vmixing in, which is WebRTC. I'm video calling into my computer that's here. So are you. And I mean, it works. It's and by the way, my audio, I'm using a $300 microphone or whatever this is, $500 microphone. I can't remember. And I'm plugging it into, and this is wild, a $5 Radio Shack USB to XLR adapter. This thing is phenomenal. I got it on clearance when Radio Shack was shutting down. The same one is being sold on Amazon through another company for $70. Same piece, just rebranded. Right. So that's how I'm connecting my audio. So obviously, a lot of this is easy, but one thing that is changing is the YouTube generation. You know, we're doing old man content. You know, I'm 35. I'm a dinosaur to a lot of these kids. A 20-year-old.
I think I feel.
I know.
I have a hard time with the YouTube stuff, by the way, because, you know, obviously in my own little, you know, if you think about like, you ever watch a movie, and if you know a little too much about whatever the thing is, you can tell when it's fake and when it's real, and kind of takes you out of the movie a little bit. Like I used to work in banking, so I watch these bank robbery movies, and it's like, yeah, no, that could never happen. That's not how that works. I have a hard time with the YouTube stuff because in my own little world, you know, of Windows and PCs and consumer electronics, whatever, I've been doing this for almost 25 years, not quite 25 years, I guess, but almost 25 years. And you look at these kids with their opinions, and they're trying to tell you which phone is best, and Apple's crazy for doing this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I almost can't take it. Like most of it is so terrible. And these guys that are like giant YouTube stars, like I just think they're vapid and pointless, you know?
It's a very different way to deliver a message, right? And I'm not saying, listen, I think some of that stuff is really good. We're on YouTube. We are not we're not specifically YouTube content.
Some of it is good. Of course.
Listen, I like my friend John Prosser. I think he's a shithead, but I like his content a lot. I think John does a very good job at delivering that kind of content because he understands long form content as well.
So in that world that he's in, I think it's reached a saturation point, just as it has, I think, for podcasts, just as it probably has for like those Netflix type shows. Like we're reaching you used to be able to go to Netflix, and if it was like a Netflix original show, you know it was going to be great. You could just watch, all of them are great. But now there are like 12,000 of them, and actually some of them aren't great. You know, a lot of them are things that really aren't Netflix originals. They're things that were made for like some international TV station or whatever, and they're, Netflix bought them for US distribution, and it's just not necessarily great. And so it's hard. I mean, if you wanted to start today, and I'm going to be like the next big YouTube star, and I'm going to make movies or videos about Windows or something, like I think that ship's pretty much already sailed. I don't think there's a lot of room for that voice anymore.
The other thing that is great, so I never want to discourage someone from trying to create content, right? And
no, but you want to find something that's unique, right? You have to be unique, and what you're doing has to be unique, right? That's, I think, the central point.
So the way that success is measured is obviously by views and downloads and all that stuff. But another way that success is measured by how much money you can kind of make doing something. We are matured content at this point, and we've been doing it for a while. So we have a reputation with advertisers, or we have a reputation with our audience that they know we're going to be consistent with doing this. So if we're getting 100 and I'm throwing the number, which is probably close, 180,000 downloads a month, right? Generally, if that's our download listenership, it's consistent. On YouTube, however, that number 100,000, 50,000 is 25,000 good. I don't know, because it's measured very differently. 25,000 is measured very differently compared to 25,000 for a podcast. So that's a problem. The other thing is, I see content that is produced very well. It's consistent. The host knows what he's talking about. It's in that YouTube format, and it has like 15,000 views or whatever it is, and has a dedicated audience. But at the end of the day, it doesn't translate to much. which is interesting to me. I think we're in this weird because of noise, because you have 500 other videos next to you that are being suggested that's the same exact content that you're doing.
Right.
So I don't know, but do you think, like, with what you do, Paul, like with the website, how do you stay? No, with what you're doing, right, on Thurrott.com, how do you stay? First of all, it has to be difficult not to fall into that clickbaity nonsense, right? Because that's essentially not for you. I'm not for you, but I'm saying for a blog, for a website. When you look at,
every once in a while, I'll write a provocative headline, right, and people will say, "Oh, that's a clickbait," No, it's not. A clickbait is when when the promise of the headline is not met by the article. That's clickbait. Think about what the word means. I have promised you something and then I didn't deliver it. That's clickbait. I'm a writer. I want people to read what I write. If I write a good headline or a provocative headline, that's not clickbait. That's just good writing. If you think about a site that has bad writing, like Forbes, where it's like Apple just, admitted to a serious problem and they reuse the same exact headline type all the time for everything. That's clickbait. That's because there's no there. It's just fake. And so, unfortunately, it is a business. And so there's a team of people around me and not under me, by the way, or around me. It's a team, it's not just me. I mean, my name happens to be on that site, but there are other sites and it's a bigger business and it's not just me, but, and there are people who understand marketing and people who understand social media and we go back and forth. And my whole thing over my whole life, adult life, doing this stuff has been more seat of the pants and more intuition than it has been calculated anything. Right. And, you said earlier, I'm kind of established in writing, and then you said audio and video. And the truth is, I just show up for this stuff, right? Whether it's here or Windows Weekly or First Ring Daily, I don't have the wherewithal to get that stuff going. I would have missed the podcasting thing if it had just been up to me. Leo called me, and Leo has the infrastructure, that made Windows Weekly and whatever other shows you do happen. And it's great, but I would have missed that myself. Like I'm not positioning myself as some kind of genius. And as far as the stuff that I decide to cover and what I write about and everything, I mean, back when I first got started, you probably heard this story before, but I think it's kind of relevant. I mean, the industry was very different then. There were actually paper-based magazines that went out every week.
Yeah.
InfoWorld and PC Week, which became eWeek over time. And they were like these big kind of raggy newspaper-y kind of looking things. And that's how I would read that news, and back before then, there would just be magazines like, back in the Commodore days, I'd read these Commodore magazines. I remember thinking the Commodore magazines were always like out of date because they were like a 2-month lead time on the publishing, but the weeklies were always like from that week, And
that was how you got your information. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd read those and I would say, well, 90% of this is irrelevant. Right. But there's some percentage in here that's really interesting. And I need the people that I work with to know about this stuff. And so I'd send out a newsletter saying, here's what they wrote and here's why I think this is important. And that kind of became the basis of what became WinInfo and the daily newsletter that I wrote for many, many years. And I think that, I don't want to call it perspective, but that style, that way of doing things has continued to this day. I guess I could cover every single stupid little thing that happens, whether it's just Microsoft or if I want to expand it out to
and then that brings the clicks and whatever. Yeah,
maybe. But you know what?
Maybe
not everything is important, and life is too short. And I don't think that's not the way I want it to be. And so
another aspect, I'll give you an example how this is changing. Right now we're doing the show. We have about 70 people on YouTube watching this, which is actually not our high number generally. Because we got less consistent and now we're building it again. It's getting there, but we were doing like 200 people an episode watching live, which was phenomenal. Alex Knight, one of the guys in YouTube right now in the chat, just donated $5. Just right there, boom, hit the dollar button and just gave us $5. That is an amazing, by the way, thank you, Alex. But that is amazing to think of that concept, right? That at any moment, anybody's watching and they can say, you know what? I like this conversation. Here you go. Here's a couple bucks.
Yeah, that could be transformative. I just coincidentally I wrote an article, I think it was yesterday, called Confluence, and it was kind of about this. It's kind of related. It is related to this because the traditional publishing method is you have some kind of an expert who writes a book back in the day, or maybe he starts a website back in the day, or maybe today he would start a podcast and he would tell you everything you needed to know about whatever the topic was, financial freedom or traveling to Europe or how technology works or whatever nonsense it is that you care about the most. And it was a one-way conversation. You know, he was the expert. He told you what you needed to know. You sucked it up.
Yeah.
And I always wanted it to be more of a conversation. I think one of the things I like about the podcasts and one of the things I always wanted for the websites, and you have to some degree with comments and so forth, is that it's a two-way street, right? And I never presented myself as the expert, right? I have some number of years of experience for sure. I mean, if you know, there are a few people in the Microsoft world who have as much experience with this company as I do. There are actually a few, of course, and people like Mary Jo have even more experience than I do. But there's this very select number of people. A lot of the people who write about Microsoft and MySpace are way less experienced than I am. It doesn't mean they're not experts, but I don't really position myself as an expert. You mentioned one of these things, but this past month has been very interesting because there have been two kind of high profile examples of readers giving me advice that I've taken on, and I've changed the way that I do things as a result.
Yeah.
And I love that. Right. And so the high-speed photo scanner, which is, you know, how I'm getting all these photos scanned, the ones that you were
And by the way, it looks amazing, that photo. That photo looks great.
Well, they look, it's as good as it can look given the source material, right? So it's fine. It's great. But the point is I'm getting it done. Like this is something I never would have completed on my own. And now I'm going to be able to complete it. And it's thanks to this guy who recommended it. And so that's really neat. And then, you know, less exciting, but in the email application, I've been sort of struggling with email recently. And I never heard of this app, and he recommended it. It's fantastic. And I'm going to buy it. I'm using it. And so it's neat. And so that two-way interaction, I think, is key. And I think it's a big difference today in publishing. And so if you kind of get past the, you know, these specific differences, like we're publishing on YouTube versus we used to use some ancient web technology to get a website onto the internet, or we used to print to paper and it was, I hope you got it right because you can never fix it. Honestly, the big difference is interactivity, right? And so if you're on YouTube, you're interacting with somebody, which you can do. A lot of these guys who stream games can interact with their viewers, which they do. I think it's the interactive nature.
Yeah. That's changing everything. No, that is changing.
So I can converse with you. It's a conversation. But when we can converse with others, it's a better conversation. And I think that's fascinating in a way.
I'll give you an example here. So What the Tech, obviously it's What the Tech and Mat Men are my two top shows, and two things that I absolutely love is technology and pro wrestling. I mean, it's a bizarre world I'm in that I'm an executive producer of a professional wrestling television show here in New York.
Sure.
We just got syndication in the UK on the Fight Network. We're going to be in Zimbabwe. We're going to be in Canada. So it's like a career that was a hobby that took off, much like everything else that I've done. So, but that audience, and a little bit of this is my own, you know, nurturing of that audience, because I had to work a little bit harder to gain the audience because I didn't have a core like you. You know, when we started doing the show, obviously I had that boost early on, and then I was working with you, and you, I mean, really, I attribute a lot of my career to you. You know, you brought legitimacy to me, and with technology, I've learned a lot from you with technology. So I attribute a lot of the tech stuff that I do to you, but I've had to do less nurturing with the audience, right? And I kind of fell into this where 5 years ago you really didn't have to, but now you have to be, you have to communicate, and you have to talk to them, and you have to know who your audience is and be very connected to them. And this is something that I've done very well with the wrestling stuff, because I had to really work at it. And it was an easy conversation. You know, it requires very little thought. With technology, it's a little bit more of a not thoughtless, but a thoughtful conversation where you got to think about what you're going to say and how you're going to present it, because it could be misconstrued into something else. I've started doing more, you know, right now with this chat room. I love looking at the chat and talking to them and doing the show. And I think that is what content like this is what's going to separate and break through the noise. You know, we're talking about the noise.
Yeah.
The fact that you can go and say thanks to Alex for donating and talk to, you know, people in the chat, and Albert's in there, and I see Albert in there every week, and Greg's in there, and all these guys. It's easy to take a second and talk. And I think that's what makes content different. You know, the difference between what I'm doing and the difference between, you know, a radio show, for example. A radio show is not going to sit there and thank an individual person that just gave them $5 live on the air. It's a rarity. It's a very small, because there's a wall up between you and the audience. This kind of breaks through.
I think that's all going away. I mean, this thing that we're doing in what we'll call the radio space is the new normal, you know, and I think it's great. I think it's an improvement.
Hey, listen, if this doesn't work out, I'll just become a cam girl. That's it. I'll just become a cam model.
Sure.
I'm used to getting tips anyway. I'll just start taking shirts off. You know, that'll happen. Just wear a garter. I do think it's amazing. But what do you have planned? Like the next couple of years, right? You're seeing the evolution of content, and obviously and you brought it up. You got to kind of shuck and jive and kind of go with the flow and evolve. If you don't evolve, especially nowadays, listen, I'm an old man and I'm 35 years old. To a lot of the viewership, to a lot of the generation, like especially with the wrestling stuff, stuff, and I say this in the best way, not the worst way. I am you with the wrestling stuff because I have the experience and I have the age and I'm able to articulate my thought in a way that I'm doing better than a 20-year-old that's just screaming and reacting emotionally. How do you what do you see happening? How do you plan on evolving a little bit more, like with The Rock, for example? Because I mean, really, the website.
I don't know. I mean,
it's one of my favorite sites to go to.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just playing to your strengths. You know, one of the it's not an argument. You know, one of the debates we kind of have at work is, you know, you can kind of see how the world's going. It's like, well, we need to do this, and we need to do this, we need to do this, and you know, when I hear those kinds of things, it's like, well, you're telling me I need to do this. I mean, you know, we're not going to collectively do this. I'm going to have to do this, and I already do a lot of stuff, and you know, this is just more stuff for me to do. And so, you know, when I look at like this year, for example, you know, a lot of it is just staying the course. You kind of you do what you're doing, but one thing I'd like to get back into, which isn't so much like a new thing, it's more of an old thing, but I want to do more interviews, for example. I think there are a lot, especially at a company like Microsoft, where I have kind of a rich history. You know, a lot of people have been there for a long, long time, and talk about things, you know, from the past maybe, or, you know, kind of look at perspective, how the company's changed over years, whatever. So I tend to do a lot more interviews, and make that more of a formal thing. And so that's one of the big things I wanted to change this year. I mean, we're going to do a lot more. We do a lot of traveling where we go to, like, you know, industry events. We have a bunch of those scheduled, both Microsoft and non-Microsoft. Brad and I do a lot of video at those events, and like those are usually kind of fun. And I mean, some of it I can't really kind of get into, but it's, you want to, you know, respect the core of what it is that you do. I see myself as a writer, primarily, almost exclusively, but you know, you kind of want to branch into this other stuff. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion around, like, I publish a review to the site. Should there be a video review of the same product as well, right? Which you could put on YouTube, et cetera. Yeah, there should be. Yeah. Who's going to make that? Am I going to make that? You want me to write the review, and then I have to record a video and then edit a video and produce the video? Like, what is it you think I am? I mean, I don't, you know, it's a tough, you know, it's a tough thing.
It is tough. Obviously. It is tough, especially, you know, obviously you have a great team behind you. You got Brad and
yeah. Well, people that nobody knows that, you know, as well. We're going to do more live event stuff this year too. So I don't think it's problematic to say that you
need someone to do it. You got me to do it.
Yeah, so we might, but in late, I almost said February. Actually, I guess it's late March. We're going to do a thing in New York. Mary Jo and Brad and I, that I think will be of interest to a lot of people. And I think we're going to try to do those on a more regular basis, and it's video related, live event related. So I can't say too much. So I mean, we have
obviously,
various plans, but yeah.
Listen, I think that's the amazing thing, right? The fact that you could say, like, I want to go live, And then you just got to put the pieces together after that, because it's possible. 10 years ago, to go live from Rattle and Hum or whatever bar, you know, you would possibly do it at, or Microsoft. Like we did the Microsoft store, right? We produced. I produced it locally. I sent it to Twit, and Twit put it on the air. That was not really an easy task 10 years ago. That would have required a lot more effort compared to, you know, how we did it. And by the way, we did it 3 years ago or 2 years ago. The amount of effort it would take today is half of what it was then.
Right.
It's just the evolution of content creation, the evolution of getting information out there. You know, I was 22 months. I was busy. I had a full-time job, and I went through a life-changing process of having 2 amazing kids and remodeling my house and you know, having a real job for the first time in my life. I feel like those 22 months I missed out on a lot of this, but I wouldn't have the perspective I have now if I hadn't done it. You know, my boss at that job is one of the most brilliant people I've ever worked with. So I learned a lot, and I'm able to incorporate that into now, and I have a little bit more discipline with stuff. But the reality is, you know, everything is changing, especially, you know, even the way you write, Paul. And I've always said to you, you do something that a lot of people don't. And this is a key thing. You know, when you look at Google, the most successful websites are written at a 5th or 6th grade level. Did you know that? Seriously. But your writing is not pompous. It's not arrogant. It comes off that I'm reading it and I hear the voice that you're saying it in, and I could relate to it. And I think that plays a big part into a successful article. You know, you're reviewing, let's say, a Lenovo laptop. How many other websites are reviewing that Lenovo? A ton of them.
Sure.
But why does yours stand out? Because it's written in a voice that can be relatable. And you're not on the take, you know? That's also part of it.
I'm definitely not on the take. I wish I was on the take. That'd be nice. No, I that's not, you know, calculated. It's just kind of the way I am. I in the sense that there are probably no stories I have that have been told a million times. I mean, when I first signed up at what became Windows IT Pro, it was still NT magazine back in the day. I was writing a weekly editorial for them, and I the first in-person meeting I had out in Colorado with this team was basically, it was like the scene in Airplane where everyone's waiting in line to beat up on the person who's, you know, histrionic in the seat. And it was the entire editorial team around a table, all of them taking swings at the way that I wrote. And it was so against their style guide. You have to stop saying I and me. It's too personal. Your sentences are too long. You need to blah, 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 like on and on and on it went. And I was like, guys, I'll do this for your stuff because I get it. It's a magazine and it's formal and, you know, whatever. But I am not changing the way that I write for this place. I'm like, I'm sorry. This works for me. Like, this is me. And what's interesting about that, and this, again, it's not, I want to be really clear. It's not, I'm a genius and I saw the future, but that kind of became the way things are, right? Like a lot of stuff is now like personal stories and, you know, it not straight up news. Like it's people injecting their opinions into stuff. And, you know, one of the things I said like early on is I'm never gonna call or write an expert and get a quote. You know, I'm gonna supply that opinion. I'll do that myself. You know, like you see that in articles all the time. You know, Bob Smith, analyst at IDC, thinks that the PC market is going to tank. You know, I don't care what Bob Smith thinks. I think the PC market's going to tank. I'm going to write about that. You know, like I that was just my shtick. I don't know what to call it. It wasn't calculated. This is how I'm going to be successful. I just figured it out. I don't mean it like that. It's just I'm just going to be me. You know,
but you also, I mean, this is the other thing, right? For all the love that you get, you also have detractors. Same with me. And I think it has to do with the fact that you when you say, like for me, a lot of my detractors come from the fact that I speak for the general audience. When I'm talking, when I'm asking questions, and when I'm thinking about computer usage or PC usage, I'm not thinking about me. I'm thinking about everybody else, right? And that's how you measure success. Success is not measured by the small micro group of people that are very much into a product. Success is measured by mainstream exposure and everybody using it. So when I talk, I talk about that, even though I have a pretty technical background, and I get shit for that. You also you get crap for saying that you're wrong, and you are very quick to say when you're wrong, you're wrong. And people think that's people think that's a problem.
I'm not Nostradamus, Andrew. You know, like I just like, you know, whatever. I'll give you an example.
You're not a cheerleader. You're not a cheerleader.
No, I'm absolutely not a cheerleader. I mean, last summer, Microsoft was rumored to be releasing a $400 version of Surface Pro, and then it became known that this thing was Surface Go. I got to see it early in New York, and you know, look good. It's like high quality. You know, the build quality is very high, and everything looks like a Surface product. Great. I said, we'll have to see what it's like in real life, though, right?
Yeah.
Before we have an opinion on this thing. And so, when you see what it's like in real life, the performance is terrible. It's off the charts terrible. It's not even close. Battery life is like 4 to 5 hours, which is completely unacceptable in 2018 at the time. And then for me personally, as an adult, it's not a full-size keyboard, so I can't really type on it. It's uncomfortable. Even Mary Jo says she can't type on it.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's like a triple whammy of I can't recommend this product. I'm not even going to bother with it. It's a non-event. It doesn't matter if it's affordable compared to other Surface devices. It's just not a device I can recommend. But you know, there's a huge part of this country, and I'll say the world probably as well, that can't handle that kind of directness. And what they want is some kind of a wiggle room, like a little bit of an out, like, because you know, some of them bought it and they're like, well, you know, I bought the thing and now you're making me look like a jerk. You know, I obviously don't make good decisions because your opinion says that this thing is a piece of crap. Could you at least admit that it would make sense as a blah, 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 whatever? And it's like, no, this makes sense under no circumstances. You know, Mary Jo will say that, well, she's like, well, I like it sometimes because I'm going out and I can stick it in my bag. It's really small. And if something comes up, I have it with me. And it's like, well, that's a very nice thing for you rich people to have. You have computers for special purposes. Like you have different pairs of shoes. You know, it's like, it must be nice to be that rich. You know, like, I don't mean to make fun of Mary Jo, but I mean, I'm not what she's doing really is making people who did buy the thing feel like they aren't idiots. And I'm not trying to say they're idiots. If you like it, it's fine. I don't care. But I can't recommend it to other people. I can't.
You personally cannot recommend. Maybe they can't recommend it. You cannot recommend it. I always have that argument with people. Like not everything that works well for me is going to work well for you. I could only speak on my personal experience.
Well, I
use a Mac for my personal experience. I base it, you know.
But hold on. I'm not saying it's not good for me. It's not good for me. I'm saying it's not good for you. I'm saying it's not good for anybody. Okay. Now, my point here is it's not good for anybody. Nobody should buy this thing. It's terrible. The problem is in the Windows community that is, you know, that I'm a part of, is it's a Microsoft product, and people don't like to hear that, you know. And it's like, what are you doing? You kind of rowing against the stream here, like. And I have been asked twice. I do a weekly Q&A thing with premium readers where they can ask me questions. In the past 3 months, I have been asked twice, maybe by the same person. Are you surprised that this product that you think is a piece of crap has been so successful? And it's like you're connecting two things that have nothing to do with each other. I had no opinion when this thing launched whether it would be successful or not. But a month before it launched, I wrote an editorial where I think the title was something along the lines of a $400 Surface Pro ? Hell yes. Meaning Microsoft needs to get out of the super premium price scale thing and make Surface more affordable. And if one way to do that is to have a lower cost Surface Pro, I am all for it. Now, the way they did it, I don't agree with, right? But as far as it being successful, what does that have to do with my opinion of it? I had no opinion about whether it would be successful, what degree of success. I still don't actually think it's all that successful, but whatever. It doesn't make it not a piece of crap. Ford sold millions and millions of Ford Escorts. It doesn't mean those cars were good. It's not better than the Porsche. The Porsche is a lot more expensive. There's a reason people buy these things. Yeah. It's all they can afford.
That's something I want to talk about this week on the show. You kind of touched on that lightly, is the fact that the PC market is dwindling. You know, there's a major slowdown in growth on the PC market. And I'll go into detail next week on this. Yeah. On this growth and how it's kind of plateaued. And it's really, and I wrote in the notes, and I kind of want to elaborate, and I'm just going to leave a teaser because we could talk about this for 30 minutes, and we don't have 30 minutes.
Sure.
The slowdown of PC growth has less to do with sales and more to do with life expectancy life expectancy growth for computers. The
Yep.
ability to have a computer and have it last 7 years is way more realistic now because of better hardware and because of better software, more efficient software, better battery life. The technology has grown along with the software side, where we can hang on to a laptop for 7 years when 10 years ago, a 7-year-old computer was, I mean, it was
a dinosaur.
terrible. It was a dinosaur. It was
So
unusable.
you are correct. However, as far as sales go, which is market share, the PC industry has actually collapsed. The growth has not slowed; it has reversed, and so
Reverse.
PC sales have fallen for 7 years in a row. That means that as of today, the PC market is approximately 2/3 the size it was at its peak in 2011. However, you're still correct because the installed base, which is the usage share, the amount of people out in the world using PCs, has not changed.
The
There's
same amount, yeah.
1.5 billion Windows PCs out in the world, and that proves that what you just said is correct. People are holding on to the computers.
Right?
1.5 billion. Yeah.
Billion. Okay. So I heard a million. I was
So
like, we can't.
no, so you're right. And the reason is because they're holding on to the PCs longer. So PCs can last longer because frankly, that hardware curve where it was all megahertz has dropped off the face of the earth. The difference in performance between a quad core 8th generation, whatever it is today, and computer from 4 years ago is non-existent for most tasks. You know, if you Word, Excel, email, web browsing. The quality of the machines has gone up. People are moving to mobile for a lot of the tasks that they used to do exclusively on PCs. That helps the PC last longer as well because they're only using it for certain things now. And so, yeah, that's a fact. What you just said is true.
Somebody sent me an email and he said, "What do you think is going to help reverse that? Like, what do you think it'll be?" And honestly, and this is obviously I'm going at a
Something's going to help reverse it.
I do think something will reverse it. I do. It has to be
no, nothing will. Nothing
a major leap forward.
Nope.
I mean,
no,
it's
not, no, Andrew, it's never going to change. You know what this is? It's we're at a point now where it might do little ups and downs depending on some things down the road. There's never going to be a reversal where all of a sudden we need computers for more stuff. There isn't.
Quantum computing, Paul.
No, we're never going to need computers for more stuff.
Yeah,
our time will be divided between other things. Voice, it's the thing we talk about this on the show all the time. You're going to be able to sit down in a plane, and the back of the thing's going to be a screen. It's going to iris log you in, and you have all your content. That tray is going to be a keyboard if you need to type. You don't need to bring a computer. You don't even need to bring a phone.
Yeah.
It's not something that disappears quickly, if at all. I mean, there'll always be some use for it, but this is like when the world went to cars, from like horses and buggies and things. And I'm sure there were people who are like, this gas powered
that car thing is not happening. Gas,
the horse
wants to do this?
The horse is coming back, baby. And you know what? There are still horses. There are still horses. Nobody really rides them into town to get groceries now, but they still exist. They're animals or whatever, but they don't, horses don't go away, but they're no longer the center of transportation for families or whatever, for individuals. And
sure,
the PC is like that.
And by the way, the PC is not the only one. This is going to happen to phones.
Oh yeah, it's
already started.
Already happening. Yep.
And we talk about this. It's evolutionary now. It's not revolutionary. It's evolutionary. These devices are not progressing.
Yeah.
My iPhone 7 Plus is still great for me to use. And you would think I'm in technology. I do this for a living. I have one phone that I buy every year, and I have another one. I don't need to get a new iPhone because this phone is not just good enough, but it's great. And that wasn't a thing a while ago. No,
it's a my other computer is using narrator for some reason. It's talking to me. I must have hit a button a couple of times too many or something. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's every generation of these computing devices, it comes to power more quickly and it goes away more quickly. And that's what's been happening. I mean, we're moving right along. I don't know what to equate this to exactly, but we used to have to go into a room to use a computer. It was a specific room because it would sit there.
House, yeah.
Okay, and then we had and then you could move around the house and you could move around the world. You could take your computer around the world. Now you can put your computer in your pocket. Eventually, your computer's just going to be. It won't be something you have to carry and charge, and it will just be available. These resources will just be
Be
available
there.
to wherever you are. The closest thing I can equate it to, I guess, is Star Trek. Where you're on the ship and something's going wrong, and you talk to some voice in the sky, and what's going on in quadrant 12, and they tell you, or the screen opens up and there's the Klingon ship or whatever.
I'm going to tell you,
I mean,
in 30 years, in 40 years, they're gonna look back and say, do you know how effing ridiculous these people were? They were staring at this thing all day long. They were constantly attached to it. They were obsessed. It was an
worse.
epidemic.
They carried another charger.
They carried
so the thing would be more portable, right?
Yeah,
they are gonna
that
deem
to them
will be stupider than smoking.
Yeah,
they're never going to understand.
This is going to be looked at as an epidemic, and how it shifted culture, and it shifted how we react with each other. When I was in Europe, when I was in Ireland, Paul, and then we can wrap it up. You know what I did not see in Ireland? I did not see people at a bar with their phones out on the bar. I did not see it. Yeah. It was non-existent. You know what? If you got a message, you looked at it quickly and you put it away. Nobody had their phones out. My friend Chauncey, that's been living there for about 2 years now, goes, Andrew, look at the bar, packed bar, young. And it wasn't like an old man bar. It was like a young,
like people
cool
actually
bar.
Talking to people. Yeah.
He goes, we are the only assholes at the bar. Me, you, and your wife, with our cell phones on the bar, and we're looking at it constantly. Nobody else was doing that.
This is not an American unique problem. I see this in Western Europe too. But fair enough. I do think this weird thing with the phone is a temporary. I almost called it a temporary insanity, but what it really is an immaturity, and I think it eventually goes away. In fact, if anything, the ability to find any fact that you need at any time ultimately will be beneficial. It still is. It is today, but you're watching the Super Bowl what's the name of the guy, or what's the thing? When was the last time that blah 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 whatever it is? I would never say those words out loud. The ability to be able to do that doesn't detract from the conversation, right? Because there'll always be that person, what are you doing? There's people here. You should talk to the people. I am talking to people. We have a question. Instead of speculating, we're going to get the answer, and then the conversation goes on. It's for the conversation, right? That, to me, that becomes a positive, not a negative. But yeah, we've all been there. You walk in a restaurant or bar, and 4 people sitting at the table. They're interacting with someone else.
Somewhere there's a time traveler.
By the way, this is not unique to the smartphone thing. The other example of this, which granted could be on a phone, but is you'll be talking to somebody in person like we are. Imagine my phone rang, and not without even saying anything to you. I'll just pick it up and start talking to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's this notion that the person you're with is the least important person to you,
no matter what the problem is.
Most horrible social mistake that I see again and again and again.
Well, I tell you, emails, right? I do this all the time. I'm like, hold on, I got an email. The email could wait. The email could wait. That is the point of an email.
Right.
It waits.
I got a wire transfer. Got a wire. Yeah. What do you call those things? A telegram.
I'm going to tell you, Paul. There is a time traveler somewhere, and he came to 2018 and 2019, and then he went back, and they go, so what did you learn? He's saying, he goes, you believe it? These assholes have every answer to every question ever presented in their pocket. And you know what they're doing? They're fighting over if a picture is gray or blue.
Yeah.
That is what they're doing.
Right, you can take that a little further. It's like a society that can instantly get the answer to any question. You'd think that those people would have awesome conversations. And no, they're actually kind of ridiculous.
They're ridiculous.
Like the things that they worry about, the things that are so concerning. It's just the stupidest stuff. Yeah. It's sad. It's too bad.
Listen, that's where we live. Paul, this was fun. I enjoyed this. Look at this. We did 2 hours today. Can you believe that?
I'm gonna have to go.
We did an hour here and an hour there, and this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing the show on Tuesdays. This is nice. Guys, I appreciate if you're watching live. 71 people still in the chat. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. If you enjoy this kind of content, we're going to be doing more of this. Go to patreon.com/whatthetech. You could fund us there as little as $1 per bonus show. You could go do that, or you could hit the fun button right now on YouTube. You could do that also. For all things Paul, go to Thurrott.com. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever, and also hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. That's a huge help. When you hit that subscribe button, it helps build our channel. You'll be shocked how much that's worth to us. And that's it for this week. See you later.